The motel Cross put me in was on the outskirts of town. One of those highwayside relics where the sign flickers and the ice machine never works. Room 12 smelled like stale cigarettes and pine-scented cleaner, and the floral bedspread had seen more tragedy than I dared imagine. But it was safe. For now. I locked the door, wedged a chair under the knob, and collapsed on the edge of the bed. The silence in the room was thick. No hum of conversation. No Callie's soft snoring in the next room. No kitchen clatter or music in the background. Just me, my thoughts, and the echo of betrayal bouncing between the walls. I took out my phone. The wallpaper was still a picture of us. Me, him, and our daughter, grinning under the autumn leaves at Oakmere Park. A perfect memory. A perfect lie. How many times had he looked at me like I was the love of his life while plotting my death? How many nights had he laid beside me, his hand resting on my back, while wondering if it would be the last time? I opened my photo gallery and stared at him. My husband. My partner. The man who brought me soup when I was sick. The man who held my hand through childbirth. The man who once surprised me with a candlelit bath after I lost my mother. And yet he was also the man who researched poisons. Who stood over me, drink in hand, calculating if the dose would be enough. Who watched his sister take the first sip and never warned her. Francesca. I hadn't liked her. I'd never pretended to. But no one deserves that. I remembered her laugh, sharp and loud like a warning siren. She was always pulling him away from us. Always whispering in corners, her voice laced with judgment. She never called me by my name, just her. As if I were the intruder. Now, knowing she'd been blackmailing him, I didn't know what to feel. Pity? Rage? Relief? A knock at the door sent me bolt upright. I grabbed the lamp and tiptoed to the peephole. Cross. I dropped the lamp and unlocked the door. She came in holding a bag of takeout and a box of files. You need to eat, she said. And read this. I sank into the stiff armchair while she unpacked containers of Thai food. I barely registered the smell. What is it? I asked, nodding at the box. She handed it to me wordlessly. Inside were police files, photos, court transcripts. Everything tied to a man I didn't know, but who wore my husband's face. 10 years ago, before we met, he'd been investigated for suspected embezzlement from a small logistics firm. Charges were dropped, but the company folded. 2 employees were never seen again. Cross said it was likely they had mob ties. He never told me. Not once. I've got a friend in financial crimes, she said. This only surfaced because of a flagged name match. He kept it quiet, buried the records deep. But this is your husband. I don't know this man, I whispered, flipping through the documents. You never did, she said. Maybe she was right. The man I married had always been composed. Too composed. He never lost his temper, never snapped, even when he had every reason to. Seemed like strife. Maturity. But now it felt like calculation. Maybe every move was practiced. Every smile engineered. He'd always made me feel like I was safe. Like he had things under control. But he wasn't in control. Not anymore. Not when the walls closed in. Not when his sister turned the screws. Not when the mob came collecting. I pushed the food away and stared at the mirror on the opposite wall. The woman looking back at me had dark circles under her eyes and hair that hadn't seen a brush in 2 days. She looked like someone coming apart. But under that, I saw someone else. A woman learning to survive. I need to see my daughter, I said softly. Cross shook her head. Not yet. If he thinks you're still dead or missing, you're safer. We're watching her, don't worry. We've got plainclothes officers near her school. She doesn't even know what's going on. And we want to keep it that way for now. Trust me. I did. But it didn't make the ache in my chest any easier. Cross stood, grabbing the empty bag. We'll keep digging. But you need to stay sharp. If he makes contact. He won't. You don't know that. Yes, I said, I do. Because he's not running. Not anymore. He paused at the door. What makes you so sure? I stared at my reflection again. Because desperate men don't run, I said. They burn everything down. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Even in that stale motel bed, surrounded by buzzing silence and a useless bedside lamp, I couldn't shut my brain down. I kept thinking about Callie, what she'd eaten, what her laugh sounded like that morning, whether she knew something was wrong but didn't have the words to say it. At 6:13 a.m. Cross called. He's moved. My heart stopped. My husband. No. The man from the cafe. The one your husband handed the envelope to. I sat up, grabbing the nearest pen. Who is he? His name is Marcus Darrow. No online presence. No social media. No public job. No tax records since 2012. Mob. Loan shark. Muscle for hire. Clean enough to avoid arrest. Dirty enough to keep rich men nervous. He's not a big player, but he's someone you call when you're out of time and out of options. Why would my husband be meeting with someone like that? Cross's voice was tight. Because whatever hole he was in, it was deeper than we thought. She sent over the surveillance photos her contact had pulled from nearby security cameras. The resolution wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough. My husband in his pressed navy coat, handing a thick envelope to a man with slicked back hair and cold, shark eyes. The timestamp was from 2 days before our anniversary. He wasn't just settling a debt. He was buying time. Or forgiveness. Or silence. I pressed my fingers against my eyes. Where's Marcus now? Checked into a mid-range hotel under a fake name. I've got someone watching the place, but he's slippery. He never stays in one spot long. We need to move fast if we want answers. I'm coming with you, I said. No, you're not. Cross. This isn't a debate. If he recognizes you, we lose our leverage. You stay put. I hung up, but I didn't sit still. I couldn't. Instead, I started making a timeline. Everything I could remember in the months leading up to the dinner. The late nights. The sudden trips. The argument with Francesca that he refused to explain. A new locked drawer in his home office. The missing tax returns. The odd call I once overheard. Something about delays, and she doesn't know yet. He'd been unraveling right in front of me, and I'd chalked it up to stress. Because what wife wants to believe her husband is plotting murder? 2 hours later, Cross called back. He ran. What? Marcus. The hotel room was empty by the time we got there. Left the TV on and the shower running. But he left something behind. Like what? She paused. A receipt. From a gas station near your house. Dated the morning of your anniversary. Goosebumps climbed my spine. What was he doing near my house? Either collecting or delivering. We pulled security footage from the gas station. He wasn't alone. Who was with him? I think you'd better sit down. I sat, the air in the room turning thick. She texted me the image. It was blurry, but I recognized the profile immediately. Sharp nose. Hair twisted up in that same perfect chignon. Francesca. She was standing beside Marcus Darrow, holding a manila folder and gesturing angrily. She knew him, I whispered. She wasn't just influencing your husband. She was part of the operation. Something cold and ancient uncoiled in my stomach. You need to be very careful, Cross said finally. If Francesca suspected your husband might talk, she may not be done. She's dead. Yeah. But the people she worked with aren't. My hands trembled as I held the phone. I looked around the room. Old lamp, flowered curtains, flickering light bulb. This wasn't hiding. This was waiting. Cross. Yeah. I want to be the one who ends this. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, you might get your chance. It wasn't grief I felt when I looked at Francesca's old photos that night. It was fury. Raw and unfiltered. The only reason I was alive was because I hesitated in drinking the wine, and by some divine twist of fate or instinct. Cross had a theory. She wasn't just helping your husband, she said on the drive to Francesca's apartment the next morning. She was leading him. You think she was in charge? Look at it from the outside. Francesca knew everything about you. She knew your routines, your passwords, your favorite wine. If she wanted access to your assets, all she had to do was wait until your husband was desperate enough to go along with it. She manipulated him. She owned him. We used the spare key I had once kept in my purse back when trust came easy. Her apartment was quiet, almost sterile. Everything was in place, so in place it felt curated, like a museum of a woman who no longer existed. No half-eaten cereal bowls. No mismatched socks. Not even a single fingerprint on the granite countertop. She didn't live here, I whispered. She staged this. Cross nodded. That means whatever she didn't want found is hidden well. We split up. I went to the closet. Francesca had dozens of designer pieces. Classic, subtle, expensive, but nothing flashy. I ran my hand along the back panel and tapped. Hollow. There was a loose board behind her winter coats. Inside, a black leather binder with documents and photos. I pulled it out with shaking hands and set it on the kitchen counter just as Cross returned from the bathroom holding a bag of burner phones. She wasn't subtle, Cross muttered. Inside the binder were financial records. Some real, some forged. Fake passports. A will. My will. Printed and unsigned but edited with Francesca's handwriting. There were notations next to Lana's name. Circles around estate amounts. And then worse, photos. One of me leaving the bank. One of me picking up Lana from daycare. One of me asleep in my bed. Oh my, I breathed. She was having me followed. Or she was doing it herself, Cross said grimly. Then I saw the receipts, payments from my husband's account to a name I didn't recognize. Lena Beck. Who's Lena Beck? Cross was already dialing. Alias, she said. Let's see what she used it for. While she made her call, I flipped through the last sleeve of the binder. That's when I found it. A photo of Francesca and Marcus Darrow. Not a blurry security cam still, but a clear close-up shot. She was younger, maybe 5 years ago, standing beside him outside a warehouse in New Jersey. She wore all black and a tight smile. On the back, written in her handwriting, "Leverage is loyalty." Cross returned with a frown. Lena Beck is tied to a shell company in Delaware. No physical address, but the same account wired money to 2 known affiliates of a crime network. My stomach turned. Organized crime, I said. Cross nodded. Your sister-in-law wasn't just involved. She was laundering money for them. Possibly managing logistics. And your husband? He got too close to the fire. He didn't even know how to spell logistics, I said bitterly. She must have baited him in slowly, played on his pride, his panic. Told him it was just temporary. And when he realized the cost, he panicked. Maybe tried to back out. Which meant I had to die. I stared at the picture again. He agreed to something terrible and she held it over him. Cross didn't say anything for a while. Then, it's possible he thought he was protecting you and Lana by staying in. By killing me? I snapped. No. Maybe by going through with her plan before someone worse got to you. Before Marcus came knocking. The room spun. Francesca wasn't just dangerous. She was a conductor. And even in death, her music hadn't stopped. The crime network she answered to was still out there, still watching. Which meant I had no time to mourn or fall apart. Burn the binder, I said quietly. Cross looked up. Make copies first. Then burn the original. Why? Because if they find out we have it, we'll be next. We left Francesca's apartment with copies of everything. The binder, the burner phones, and the grainy photo of her with Marcus Darrow. I sat in the passenger seat of Cross's car, staring down at that image like it could talk to me. She had orchestrated all of it. The poisoning. The manipulation. The lies. And now she was dead by accident. But that didn't stop the noose from tightening. You said Marcus Darrow was at the restaurant that night, Cross said as we pulled onto the main road. I nodded. He gave my husband an envelope. I didn't see what was in it, but he was shaking when he tucked it into his jacket. Did you see what he did with it afterward? No. Just that he kept looking around like he expected someone else to appear. Cross sighed. Then we need to find that envelope. It didn't make sense until I said it out loud. You think that envelope is the reason for everything? I think it holds the last piece of whatever your husband was caught up in. If Marcus Darrow gave it to him, it wasn't a thank you card. We went back to the house. I hadn't stepped into the master bedroom since the night Francesca collapsed. The sheets were still tangled from the chaos. The empty wine glass was gone. The blood had been cleaned. But the silence still screamed. I don't know where he would have hidden something like that, I said quietly. Let's start with the obvious. Cross began searching through drawers and behind the headboard. I knelt beside the nightstand and opened the drawer on my side. Nothing but a sleep mask and half a tube of hand cream. I moved to his side. A few old receipts, cufflinks, and, there, a narrow leather-bound journal. I opened it. Mostly blank. But in the very back was a slit cut into the inside of the cover. Tucked inside an envelope. My throat tightened. I handed it to Cross, my fingers trembling. That's it. That has to be it. She held it under the desk lamp. No return address. No name. but the seal's fresh. She opened it carefully, her eyes scanning the contents with practiced focus. Then her jaw set. "What is it?" I whispered. She laid the papers out on the desk. A notarized agreement. A confession. And a photograph of a little girl. Not Callie. This child was older. 7, maybe 8. With wide dark eyes and a thin smile. She was standing in front of a rundown motel holding a stuffed animal. "Who is she?" Cross hesitated. "According to this, she's Marcus Darrow's daughter." "What? And your husband?" Cross's voice trailed off, but she finally met my eyes. "He agreed to launder money through your joint assets in exchange for protection, for you and for Callie. Francesca negotiated it. Marcus signed off. But your husband was losing control. He said in this letter that he wanted out, and the envelope was his last attempt to clean it up." "Clean it up how?" Cross tapped the confession. "He gave Marcus the location of someone named Genevieve Moore, a former associate who apparently flipped and went into hiding. He betrayed her in exchange for freedom." I swallowed hard. "He sold someone out." Cross nodded. "He knew Darrow would kill her. That was the price." Everything twisted in my chest. I wanted to hate him, but part of me just felt tired. Like I'd been running on fumes for months, and now the finish line was just a new beginning of pain. "He wasn't saving us," I said. "He was buying more time. Maybe. Or maybe he thought that by doing one last terrible thing he could spare you from worse." The guilt I felt was unlike anything I'd known. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal, the lies, the attempt on my life, I still remembered the man he used to be. The way he held Lana like she was made of glass. The way he looked at me before the darkness took him. "I don't know what to believe anymore." Cross placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to believe him. You just have to protect what's left." I nodded. Then she handed me a key. This was at the bottom of the envelope. A key. "Looks like a storage unit." Of course there was more. Because with people like Francesca and Marcus, secrets never came in singles. They bred like weeds. And I was finally ready to rip them out. We found the storage facility just after dusk, tucked between a rundown laundromat and a boarded-up warehouse on the east end of town. The kind of place you could pass 100 times and never notice, which I assumed was exactly the point. Cross parked close to the gate, engine idling, her eyes scanning the perimeter with a precision that reminded me just how deep she'd gone into this mess with me. He was no longer just a detective. Not really. She'd crossed that invisible line into something more personal. "You sure you want to be here for this?" she asked. I stared out at the rusted roll-up doors, each one marked with peeling numbers. "If I don't do it now, I never will." Cross handed me the key. Number etched into the metal, 47B. We walked past a few closed units, our footsteps crunching gravel. The air smelled of dust, gasoline, and something faintly chemical. The silence was thick, the kind that makes you whisper without meaning to. I found the door. 47B. A dent marred the corner and a single lock hung from the latch. I took a breath, slipped the key in and turned. The click echoed like a gunshot. I rolled the door up slowly. The hinges groaned. Inside was darkness, and then as Cross flicked on her phone flashlight, the shadows peeled back to reveal a trove of secrets. There were boxes stacked neatly against one wall. A black metal filing cabinet with a rusting top. And in the center, a folding table holding a laptop, a recorder, and a pile of old videotapes. I moved toward the table and ran my fingers over the top tape. It was labeled with a single word, Genevieve. My stomach dropped. Cross opened one of the boxes and whistled. "He wasn't just working with them," she said. "He was documenting them." Inside were ledgers, cash drop records, surveillance photos, newspaper clippings, names I didn't recognize. And some I did, judges, business owners, a retired city councilman. All of them somehow linked to Marcus Darrow's operation. To Francesca. To my husband. The walls felt like they were closing in. Cross powered on the recorder and hit play. The voice that came through was unmistakable. His voice. My husband's. "This is dated March 11th, he began, his tone calm but exhausted. "Genevieve is getting cold feet. I warned Francesca she shouldn't have brought her in. We were supposed to protect the ones who kept quiet. But now Genevieve says she wants out. She wants to tell her story. I told Francesca to let her go, She didn't listen. There was a pause. Then a shaky breath. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep pretending. Every night I look at Lana and I wonder if one day she'll see me the way I see myself. Like a coward. Like a man who sold pieces of his soul for scraps of control. My knees buckled. I had to sit. Hearing his voice in that raw, unguarded moment cracked something in me. Not sympathy. Not yet. But recognition. He knew what he was. And still he kept going. Cross sat beside me watching my face. This wasn't just about money, she said quietly. He was trying to dig his way out. With a shovel made of bodies, I whispered. We kept digging through the unit. One folder was labeled Lana. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents I never knew existed. A second life insurance policy, written in her name but payable to a trust. A trust that listed Francesca as the custodian. What the hell? I muttered. Cross leaned over. He protected Lana but gave Francesca control. That's why she was always around. She wasn't just helping him, she owned him. I clenched my jaw. And she'd still be alive if I took the drink. Cross touched my hand. She planned your death, Emma. The only reason you're here is because you fought back. We boxed up everything we could and closed the unit quietly. Outside, the streetlights flickered overhead. My mind buzzed with too many thoughts. I kept thinking about Lana. How do you explain any of this to her? As we drove away, I glanced at the mirror. For a split second, I could have sworn I saw someone standing just beyond the fence. A man. Watching. But when I turned back to look again, he was gone. I said nothing. Just gripped the folder with my daughter's name on it and whispered to myself, we're not done yet.